Welcome, everybody. Today, I feel very privileged to bring you a conversation with Hal Cranmer. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to let Hal share his story. And as we go along, you're going to learn a lot about what Hal's been up to. So, Hal, welcome.
Thank you, Simon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. Hal, if we wind the clock back, how did you start to get interested in health and then specifically nutrition? What was your trigger point?
Um, I think I've always been interested in health. I didn't know how to go about it. Uh, Growing up, I always thought doctors knew everything and I should just listen to them. Whatever they tell me, I should do that. Um, I played sports in school. Um, so I liked working out. I liked playing sports. I liked competitive athletics, things like that. So I wanted to make my body as good as I could, but I didn't know anything about nutrition. I always thought that you could outwork a bad diet. So, um, I went to school and drank a lot of beer, ate a lot of pizzas,
Yeah,
and
thanks
just
two of
thought,
us.
well, I'll work it out. I'll work it out in the morning. And it, when you're young, you can kind of do that. As you get up in years a little, it becomes harder to do. And so I think that my first kind of introduction to I should diet, the first things I remember were my doctor just saying, "Hey, your cholesterol's a little high. You shouldn't eat so much meat or, shellfish or something like that." I was stationed in the Air Force in Okinawa, Japan, and I used to go diving for lobsters and cook them up, and he'd tell me, "Well, don't put too much butter on them." So I I think that my first real introduction to nutrition kind of health was I came across a guy named Mark Sisson that wrote about the paleo diet, and you probably heard of the Primal Blueprint. I started reading that book. It made a lot of sense to me. That was probably when I was about 40. I'm 57 now, and I thought, it's probably time to start eating a little better. But I didn't take it too seriously. I tried to cut out sweets more and have more vegetables, more meat, things like that. But I was still on the vegetables are really good for you. You're supposed to eat lean meat, stay away from fat, that kind of thing, because fat would clog your arteries. So I did that for a while, and then we'll probably talk about my assisted living homes, but as I was transitioning into those assisted living homes, um, moving from Minnesota to Arizona, I caught something, and I couldn't have a solid bowel movement, and I don't mean to give too much information, but I had diarrhea for like probably 2 years straight, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I went to see multiple doctors, and they all gave me ultrasounds and CT scans and all that kind of stuff. And the best they could tell me was, "Hey, make sure you're taking a probiotic." And I'm like, "Well, that's not really doing anything." So I finally, just out of desperation, a friend said, "Well, why don't you try a functional medicine doctor? They're kind of good at stuff like that." So I found one. We had a chat. He was interested in helping me with my assisted living homes, and I was like, "Well, okay, fix me first." And so he put me on kind of a carnivore diet, or a very low carb diet, gave me a bunch of supplements. I don't know what they were. I know one was a strong probiotic. And in 2 weeks, the diarrhea was gone. Everything was working beautifully. And I'm like, wow, there's something to this. But I just thought that was kind of a diet for people who are sick. Like, you need to do that. Once you get healthy, I can go back to my old ways unless it kicks in again. And and then with my assisted living homes, I had a personal trainer that the first one I hired was a vegan. And so he's like, "Oh, we gotta get everyone being a vegan. That, meat's carcinogenic and all that kind of stuff." So I decided, oh well, I guess I need to be a vegan. So I tried that for a while. My wife thought I was going to become anorexic, and I'm like, I'm trying to eat as much as I can here. Um, and so I I uh, I just decided that wasn't working. It definitely wasn't working in my assisted living homes. And then so I kept looking around for what else. And I heard a podcast by a guy named John Jaquish. I don't know, or he was a guest on the podcast. I'm not sure which
I've
podcast it
I've
was.
interviewed him before.
Okay, great
Yeah.
guy. I don't think I've personally talked to him, but I talked to a lot of people who know him very well. And he wrote that book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, and So is Cardio. And I weightlifted my whole life. Um, and I thought, did I just waste all those hours in the gym? So I had to get the book. I read the book. As you probably know, with his X3 program, he says for the best gains, you got to do a carnivore diet. And so I bought one of those X3s and started eating meat, fish, and eggs basically. And I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. This is great. I sleep well. I feel great during the day. I um, very healthy plumbing downstairs. Um, and I don't feel sleepy in the afternoons. I feel like I'm 15 again. So I'm like, okay, there's something to this. And I just decided I'm going to start spreading the word more about the carnivore diet and some of the keto diet too, because I realized that a lot of families in my assisted living homes are not going to they're a little resistant to put mom on steak all the time.
Yeah, there's something more palatable about keto than there is about carnivore, unfortunately. Even though
Exactly.
a carnivore diet is the ultimate ketogenic diet, but
Right. And I
there's still ways
find
to
in my
touch on.
assisted living homes, if as they see other people on carnivore and they see, um, it's not harming them at all, and they see people doing well on it, they start going, well, I guess I could eat more meat. And so there can be that gradual transition from keto to carnivore.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so you made this switch over to a carnivore diet and you were doing the X3 bar workouts as recommended by John Jakish. Around what age were you at this point?
That was about 3 years ago.
Okay,
I think
cool.
it was.
And
So
and when did
54, 55, something like that.
so you were in the Air Force, and then at which point did you start moving into assisted living?
So yes, I was in the Air Force till about, I think I got off active duty in 1998.
Okay.
I was with a guard and reserve unit. I don't know if you have the equivalent in Australia, the sort of weekend warriors. You have a regular job and you sort of go fly part-time. Um, I was waiting to get an airline job, and the airlines were hiring like crazy back then. So um, I got hired by a U.S. airline. I flew for them for about 3 years, and then 9/11 happened.
Oh,
And my airline was about 3 weeks from bankruptcy after 9/11 because of the damage to the industry. And they basically laid off half their pilots. And so I was one of those pilots. And all the airlines were laying off at the time. So you couldn't go to another airline because we all got furloughed. You know, it was a union industry. So they had to hire back all their pilots that they laid off before they could look at new pilots. So they're really, you had, as a pilot right after 9/11, you had a couple choices. You could go back in the military, and I really didn't want to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. Um, you could you know, look worldwide to fly some cargo operation. And I had two young children. I didn't want to leave them for months at a time to go fly some, cargo around Africa or something like that. Or you could go find another job. Those were kind of your choices. So I chose find another job. And fortunately, my wife's sister worked for a big manufacturing company in Minnesota. And so she pulled some strings and got me hired there as a financial auditor, believe it or not. So I went from pilot to financial auditor.
mm,
Um, did that for 2 years, worked in supply chain at various manufacturing companies after that. And I was flipping houses I don't know if you have the equivalent in Australia, finding um, damaged houses and fixing them up and reselling them and making some money doing that. And then I rehab some and turned them into rental properties. I did that till about 2015, 16. And then I had a friend in the real estate business who said, if you like, rental properties, and I was renting to kids from the University of Minnesota. So he's like, you should check out assisted living. Um, these, your tenants won't be having keg parties and beer drinking and kicking in your furniture and everything. So we'd wanted to move down to Arizona. I went to flight school originally in the Air Force in Arizona, loved it. And my kids were starting to go to university. They were going to schools in Arizona. So it just sort of all came together. I took a class in how to run an assisted living home. The teacher of the class had a realtor friend who had some for sale, and we just kind of jumped in and moved down here and baptism of fire kind of. But it
Love
was,
it.
I mean, the first 2 years of doing it, I didn't have any medical background, so it was basically just to learn the business. I wasn't the diet thing. My caregivers were shopping and they were like, "Well, we're trying to save you money," so they just bought, the cheapest stuff they could. But you'd see the turnover. I mean, if they're on the standard American diet, most of my residents didn't last too long, so it made it very
As in
difficult.
they would pass away.
They would pass away, exactly. And so I thought, well, we need to keep them around because an empty bed's not bringing any money in, but I still have to pay these caregivers. I still have to buy food for the ones that are there. I still have to pay the utilities and the rent, the mortgage. So, so I just, plus I was kind of grossed out by, we're just going to put them in a chair, feed them a lot of medications and let them watch TV. And so I'm like, we're going to do better than that. Um, and I think one thing that accelerated it was I had a gentleman move into my home, and a lot of them say this, but they don't really mean it. This guy told me, I don't want to be here. I want to live at home, which everyone wants to do that, but it's sort of how badly do you want to? So I asked him how badly, and he's like, oh, very badly. And so then I said, well, I'll help you. Okay. And he was in a wheelchair when he came in. I said, if you can get up out of that wheelchair and walk to your wife's car out our front walkway, and get in it by yourself, you can go home. And I told his wife that, and she agreed. And so then I hired that trainer who was a vegan. We didn't really talk about the diet for him, but I just thought, well, I know my mom told me stop eating so much candy and, eat more salads, eat some lean meat. So we just kind of backed off on the sugar, gave him some more meat, some good vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that, some salad, held off on the salad dressing so much, gave him like apple cider vinegar, olive oil dressing. And he, sure enough, in about 7 or 8 months, and with my trainer working with him and him exercising on his own when my trainer wasn't there, he got out of his wheelchair and walked to his car and got in it and sat down and drove off with his wife. So
Amazing.
that just made me think, okay, there's a market for this, and no one's doing it. In
Yeah.
assisted living, it's all about we have, especially the big places, we have food contracts with food distribution companies. We serve what they send us, and the cooks cook what they are delivered for foods, and a lot of that's packaged so they can keep it for a long time and they can keep the inventory and the food ready to go as they need it. Plus a
Oh,
lot of old people are set in their ways, and they've been eating badly their whole lives. That's why they're in assisted living. And so it's hard to get people to change in many cases. So it's a lot easier to, oh, you want ice cream? Sure, here's some ice cream.
yeah, 100%. I mean, you walk into any kind of hospital, assisted living center, boarding school, any of those kind of like large corporate places where they're feeding a lot of people, and it's all mass food that's been bought on a real budget. So it's full of grains, it's full of sugar, it's things like massive tubs of ice cream and pancakes, as you say, for dessert. The meat is there, but it's probably not prepared very well, so it's not that appetizing. I
Right.
can 100% imagine, you know, scones and, cookies and all sorts of stuff, cereals and
Right.
granolas, all these things would just be everywhere.
Well, imagine like a fancy, I'm sure you've eaten in a fancy restaurant at some point in your life. At the end of the meal, they wheel that dessert tray in and they have all the desserts sitting there to tempt you. And it looks wonderful. It's a great marketing gimmick to get you to buy extra food, and round up the bill. The restaurants advertise their desserts, advertise their, carbohydrate meals, things like that. The assisted livings are no different. When families bring their mom or dad in or they tour the assisted living, they want to lay out this beautiful, buffet of fancy desserts and beautiful Italian dishes and, all this nice stuff that's very tempting and looks beautiful, but it's not going
Harmful.
to help them at all in their condition. But they don't
Absolutely not.
really, but they, I mean, you're always, you don't, you, when you go to the doctor, I've hardly ever had a doctor talk to me about diet. The only times they talk to me about diet is when my cholesterol is high. And, if I have diabetes, maybe they'll mention it, but, if you're reasonably healthy or have pre-diabetes or something like that, they're not gonna say anything to you. They're just gonna tell you, take a statin, here's your metformin, here's your prescriptions. I need to go to the next patient.
Spot on. Because changing your nutrition is too hard, right? Oh, we don't want you to have to change your lifestyle. We don't want you to have to
Right.
actually, think about what you're putting in your mouth. Here's something to, hopefully cover it up with some nasty side effects.
Right. It's easy. And they think like people won't respond to it. Like, oh, I don't need to get a lecture from you, doc. Well, I think more and more people want that lecture.
I agree 100%. People actually want to hear it from their doctor, and people are still very trusting of their doctor. And it would help a lot if more doctors and health professionals would stand up and say, hey, by the way, this is actually how you're supposed to eat. And a lot of the conditions and symptoms that you're presenting here are actually caused by what you've been eating. This is what a proper human diet looks like. That is a very powerful conversation, one to one coming from a doctor. But unfortunately, what 99% of doctors aren't willing to or aren't aware of the importance of that conversation.
I think a lot of them are unaware of it. I mean, I went to someone found me on social media and asked me to come to their assisted living, and it was a gorgeous, beautiful place. And they were paying that it was a husband and wife, and the husband what the wife was kind of had dementia, so she didn't really know what's going on. But the husband told me he's paying $10,000 a month, and his wife's paying $10,000 a month to be there. And his doctor walked by as we were talking, and he pulled her over and said, "Hey, you should hear what this guy's doing in his assisted living homes." And I explained what diets I was doing to the doctor, and the doctor turned to him and said, I don't remember his name, Bob, you've got diabetes. You need to follow the diet I've told you about. Okay. You don't need to go eat all this meat and all this other garbage. And I was like, oh my, after she left, I'm like, you need to get out of here. And he's like, I know, that's what I'm putting up with, but my wife loves it here, so we're stuck. I'm like, well, don't listen to her. So, I mean, I'm not trying to give medical advice, but I was just like a doctor said, you've got diabetes, you should not eat meat. I mean, just blown away by that. I take people off their diabetes medication in a month or two if they go on a carnivore diet.
So tell me, at some point you thought to yourself, all right, I'm going to start offering a carnivore or a ketogenic option in the assisted living facility. So when did you do that? How did you roll it out? What was your thought process there?
Uh, the first thing I did was started talking to families and said, here's what I want to do. Here's some studies, here's some information, here's some podcasts if you want to listen to them. I'd
Which
like to
podcast did you
try this.
recommend? Which podcast did you recommend?
Anthony Chase, believe it
Yeah,
or
I
not,
was hoping you'd
and
say that.
Sean Baker's.
Yep.
Um, and I just was like, I think this would be very helpful, especially with diabetic people. I also I I have two homes that serve or are licensed to serve people on Medicaid, which is health insurance for very poor people in the United States.
Okay.
And so those programs are administered by um, insurance companies. So I went to the insurance company that I contract with and said, what are your really hard people to place and get care for? And their right away their answer was very obese people.
Interesting.
And so they said no one wants them because they're a pain. Caregivers can hurt their backs trying to transfer them. No one wants to, help them with their incontinence. Let's put it that way. So I said, well, I'll take them. I'll take one and let's try it out. But I negotiated a higher rate. And then with that higher rate, I hired one of John Jakish's best friends I said, I want I want my first resident on a carnivore diet. I want you to train her. I will pay you your going rate. And, for 6 months and let's try it.
And John's friend is a personal trainer, or what do they do?
He's I don't know I guess a health coach would be
Gotcha. Yep.
his name's Daniel Magyar.
Okay.
He's probably, I think he trimmed down. He used to weigh about 290. I think he's about 265, but he's like 8, 9% body fat,
Oh,
just this
Jesus.
enormous gentleman. Yeah, DM Pro Trainer, I think is his website.
Cool.
Um, and so he's in Las Vegas, so we did everything virtually. He did it on the by Zoom, and we'd meet once a week. He'd send meal plans, and it was a lot of carnivore, measuring the amount of meals we serve, and a bunch of fasting. And then we used the X3. We brought in a lady who weighed 548 pounds. Um, and we put her on this diet. And in 9 months, she lost 230 pounds. And she actually moved out of my home and is living in independent living now.
Oh,
So, yeah, it was amazing. So we'd have alternating days of one meal a day and two meals a day. And like I said,
wow.
measure out the amount because we didn't want to feed her too much food and definitely not too much fat. We wanted her body to burn those fat cells. So, and she worked out hard. She had a trainer. She was in a skilled nursing facility for about 8 years before she came to us. At her peak, she was 650 pounds. So when I did that, I was like, oh, there is really something to this carnivore diet.
What
You
a
know,
what a fascinating experiment and hands-on approach you've taken with this lady. I mean,
yeah.
that would have been a very satisfying experience.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, she was going on a lot of podcasts. Everyone wanted to talk to
Oh,
her because she
really?
was doing
Yeah.
so well. Um, but yeah, it was really amazing. And that's what really clicks me in is assisted living is a great place to implement these kind of diets because we kind of control the food. Like it's not
Interesting.
at home where, yeah, I'm carnivore, but man, I could use an ice cream tonight. Or, my kids just had a birthday party and there's still cake left in the fridge. We don't do that. Our fridges are empty of that stuff. Now, I do have people who are like, I don't want anything to do with that with my mom, just feed her what she wants. And I'm trying to sort of move into everyone who wants that, but I still got to keep the lights on. So we have like a separate pantry and a separate fridge for, the food that's not carnivore, But
So it's slightly different to the way that I imagined it, but the way that you're describing it makes more sense than what I was imagining. So Hal, it's almost like you have like a one-to-one conversation with the particular um, client,
resident, we
resident,
call them. Yeah.
um, and their families generally as well.
Yeah, I
And
want to
then
be totally transparent with what I'm
yeah,
doing. I don't want people to
yeah, yeah.
come in and discover something and they are not happy. So
And if
yeah.
and if the resident has the motivation to turn their life around and to really change and become healthier, then
Mhm.
you might have this conversation with them and say, okay, well, we have this protocol that gets great results. Are you open to it? Is that kind of how it goes
Right.
down?
That's how it went down a lot at first.
Okay.
These days, because of people like you, I'm getting the word out, and I'm getting more and more calls of people who want to come to my home specifically for this. Like, I don't have to
Amazing.
have that conversation. I can say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And they're like, I'm in, I want my mother or father to do that. And I get a lot of calls of, hey, when are you going to open up a place in North Carolina or Florida or, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty busy. Yes, it is. So I think more and more people want this, and I'm trying to cater to those clientele. But interesting, when I started talking to a lot of health people about doing this, when I started out and said, "What do you think?" They'd be like, "Well, if you make everyone better and they move back home, you're going to go bankrupt." And I'm like, "No, if I can do that, I'll have no end of business." Like people aren't going to go, "Oh, I don't want to go there," or they're going to make me healthy, you know? So I thought that was a weird mindset. And I thought, that's
It's,
probably a lot of the healthcare mindset is,
well,
let's
there's
manage their symptoms for the rest of their lives and keep the revenue stream coming in.
yeah, there's that famous Goldman Sachs quote overheard in a boardroom or something like is curing patients a good business model? You know,
Yeah, a patient cured is a customer lost.
yeah, terrible. Okay,
It
so
is.
yeah, I know it is. So it started off the way that I described before, where you were sort of like consulting one-on-one with the ones that were interested in really turning your life around. Now it's
Mhm.
turned into families are contacting you because they know that you can help their loved ones get healthy, essentially.
Exactly. Right.
Wow.
They want, you know, it, stuff like weight loss, diabetes, physical ailments are very easy to fix doing this.
Yes.
Um, the dementia is a challenge, and
Yeah.
the improvements we're seeing in those are kind of incremental.
Yeah.
Um, but we also don't see the dementia people. It seems like, and I don't have any scientific evidence to back this up. It's anecdotal, but they get to a point where they really start declining fast,
Okay.
and that's when they go down. Like they'll gradually get worse, and then all of a sudden they'll get significantly worse in a short period of time.
And I
And
imagine by the time they get to you, they're starting to decline quite
they're
fast.
starting to, yeah. I mean, it's dementia's like anything else. The sooner you catch it, the better you're going to do with it. But a lot of people, when they start out with dementia, the families want to take care of them at home and hold them at home as long as possible. And then they're like, well, I can't care for them anymore. They're up all night, they're incontinent, they're drooling, they have no idea who I am. Then I get them. So it's like, boy, I wish you came to me 2 or 3 years ago. um, so I think um, it's I've I've had I've had one really good success story with dementia that they've moved back home and they're doing great. I've got others where I see them improve on their dementia tests, but I haven't never. I don't think I'm ever going to cure it. If I could, I'd be a multi-millionaire billionaire probably. But I
Well, you,
can.
you probably could if you got them in earlier.
Yes, I firmly believe that if the first signs of dementia, if they came to me or if they just did what I'm doing,
Yeah.
they could probably, at the very worst, have mild symptoms the rest of their lives. I forget my keys where they are sometimes, but they wouldn't forget what their keys are for. They'd just be a little more forgetful, which a lot of people in old age just do. So, yeah, I think because dementia starts in your 20s and 30s, I've heard, as early, maybe 30s, 40s. You just see the symptoms when you're 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, for sure.
So, um, it's even like you should be doing this now, whether you have dementia or not, to just avoid it completely.
Well, you should be living a healthy life and trying to be as healthy as you can, regardless, right? And that's
Right.
that's going to stand you in good stead the longer your life goes on.
I tell people go visit a nursing home and see how the people are there. And maybe that'll scare you enough to change your attitude to how you take care of yourself.
Okay, pretend that I'm an assisted living resident and I'm just arriving at one of your facilities and I'm
Mhm.
all in. I'm overweight, got diabetes. mild dementia. I'm all in on everything you can offer me. What would my life look like?
Okay, so what we do to start out with is do a bunch of testing for you if it hasn't been done already to sort of get a baseline of where you're at and what we need to do. Um, so I have a company an outside company that I use for people with cognitive decline. I don't use them really for those physical ailments. If it depends how badly you want to do this. I have a personal trainer that I will pay for. I found if I tried to charge extra, a lot of families are like, well, I don't want that then. I'd say, well, I want it. So I just include it in the price. Too bad you're getting it. Um, and then with the markers, I work with an in-house doctor who is very motivated by this stuff too, and the personal trainer. And then I have cooks who will cook ketogenic recipes or carnivore recipes, depending on what you'd like. If you're more into I want to eat, I still want to enjoy my food and everything, we go. I mean, I enjoy the carnivore, but that's what I get a lot of from the residents. So we more the ketogenic path. If they're like, I want to lose weight, I want to get rid of my diabetes, I want to walk again, all that kind of stuff, we go straight to carnivore. And we try to show them, these are the results we're getting, and realize there's going to be a transition and you're probably going to be craving a bunch of stuff, but we're going to try to satisfy you. We, for the keto stuff, we use a lot of cookbooks from a lady named Maria Emmerich. I don't know if you've heard of her,
Yeah, of course.
but
Yeah.
she is one of the nicest ladies I've ever met. And after my first podcast with Sean Baker, she reached out to me and sent me all her cookbooks totally free of charge and said, I love what you're doing. So I looked through them, and a lot of the stuff she does is like she'll take pancakes and make them carnivore or keto, 5 grams of carbs with a monk fruit syrup on them. So we'll transition them like that with, make them think I'm eating pancakes or lasagna. She has keto ice cream you can make out of egg whites, um, things like that. Pudding that you can make out of egg whites. We make milkshakes out of Ben Bickman's protein powder or Equip protein powder. So we try to, you know, not make it hardcore, like you're just
Yeah.
going to eat, you know, steaks every day or something like that. We're going to try to mimic what you did when you first came here, before you came to us, and just gradually transition you and I try to get rid of the artificial sweeteners, the allulose, the stevias, things like that. But maybe we'll start with that to get you more accustomed to it, get you more, and use fat more than sugar to try to satisfy you. And then as we get better onto it, we'll try to really reduce all that. Obviously, we still want to give them a lot of fat, especially the dementia people. The more into ketosis we can get them, the more those ketones are fueling their brain rather than glucose.
Fantastic. And are they eating 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, one meal? What's the story there?
They're eating 3 meals a day, just because the Department of Health requires us to give them 3 meals a day. I, if we really think it'll help someone eat less than 3 meals a day, I'll have a doctor prescribe it. I swear a doctor could prescribe heroin, and the Department of Health would go, okay, the prescription matches what you're giving them. Sounds good. So we try to space the meals in a smaller window. So we'll have the first meal about 8 in the morning, and we'll have the last meal about 4 in the afternoon. So they'll
Yeah.
still
Yeah,
4,
fasting.
4:35 maybe. So they'll get 14, 15, 16 hours of fasting every day.
Okay.
And we tell them the kitchen's closed after that last meal. So you're not coming in for a midnight snack or anything like that. We've actually put locks on the pantries and fridge at times when we've had people try to sneak out there.
Okay. That's great. So you're obviously doing the nutrition, you've got personal trainers to help them with movement. Is there any, are you doing anything with circadian health or sunlight?
So we try to get them up and outside every morning. Um, when they first wake up, we'll try a couple of my homes. So it depends. on the motivation of the caregivers, but a couple of my homes take them out walking in the morning.
Yep,
And the nice thing about old people is they don't spend a lot of time on screens. So
that's good.
you don't have to worry about, blue blocker sunglasses or something at night that
Yeah,
we turn off the screens. They do like to watch TV. So we
yeah,
do have to discourage that. Um, that those are things we do. We also have some other therapies. We do red light therapy.
awesome.
You see the sauna next to me here, but we have saunas in the homes.
Wow.
Um, and we try to we just got a piece of equipment called exercising with oxygen therapy. I don't know if you've heard of that,
I
called
think I have
Live
tried that.
O2.
Yeah.
So you have tried it?
A friend of mine had some sort of device that I was
Yeah.
using. Yeah.
So let me explain it a little. So it's got a big bag, and it's got actually two big bags that hang on a little scaffold thing. And one of the bags, the big bag has 85% oxygen. Our normal air is 20%. And then the little bag has air with just 14% oxygen. It's sort of simulating you're up in a high altitude. Um, so they get on a stationary bike, or if they can't get on a bike, we have other pieces of exercise equipment. But the trick is to raise their heart rates, and they pedal and they wear an oxygen mask as they're biking, and we give them 85% oxygen to start out with, try and saturate their body as much as we can, and then we flip the switch and it goes to the high altitude, the 14% oxygen. We have a one of those pulse oximeters that tells you your percent oxygen that got really popular during COVID, um, on their fingers, so we can monitor how their levels of oxygen are in their body. And we'll get them up to 98, 99, 100 for with the really good oxygen. And then when we flip it, we'll bring them down to 90, 88, 85%. And what that does is it raises your heart rate just naturally because your body's saying, there's not a lot of oxygen here. I need to pump it as best what we've got as best I can to as far as I can. And it also dilates all your blood vessels. It makes them get wider. So the body becomes more efficient at using oxygen and try to get it in. Then we'll flip the switch, get them down to 88, 85% oxygen, flip the switch, and they'll suddenly get 85% oxygen with their heart beating fast and their blood vessels all dilated, and it'll shoot the oxygen into lots of parts of their body that haven't probably had oxygen nearly as much as it should, including their brain. And we see cognition coming back. We see energy levels getting better. We see much better sleep. We see much bigger appetites, because one of the big problems with elderly people is that their appetites um, decrease dramatically. In fact, I have elderly people tell me, I don't like the taste of water. I don't want to drink that. And we're trying to keep them hydrated, especially in the dry climate here in the desert in Arizona. So, but having that, you can see the improvement in them. Plus, they get a workout. Keep them on it for 15 minutes. We increase the tension in the bike, make it harder to pedal. So their heart's beating harder just from the exercise, as well as when we deprive them of the oxygen. So all that, the regular exercise, the Live O2, the sauna, the red light, seems to really help. I mean, it's wonderful when the Department of Health comes to your home and goes, "Wow, all your residents are like walking around and doing really well." And I'm like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Well,
I should try this."
Hal, you just got lucky. You just got the healthy ones at yours.
I just got the healthy ones. Yeah,
I'm sure you've heard that stuff from people.
I have, and I have enough friends in hospice companies. I don't know if you have hospice in Australia, but
Yeah.
it's basically end of life care where they just make you comfortable. They don't try to fix you. And I get a bunch of residents that are on hospice come to me. So
Wow.
I don't necessarily get the easy
No,
one.
no, it
and
doesn't
and we
sound
get
like
them
it.
off hospice. Like they get well enough that the hospice says they no longer qualify. They're too healthy for hospice.
But
So
I just think it's brilliant. I mean, anyone listening to this who has a family member who's considering assisted living must be thinking, get them here, get them in this
yeah.
environment where they can actually heal. So, I mean, on
Well, the
that,
trick is we need more assisted livings to do this. I mean,
yeah, because I mean, you're one
not
of
I only have 40 beds.
yeah, so you've got four facilities with 10 people in each. Is that right?
Hmm. correct.
And you're really the only one in America who's offering this sort of service.
There's one in San Diego that she's doing a phenomenal job. It's There's a neurologist called Dr. Dale Bredesen
Okay.
who's taken a very functional medicine approach to Alzheimer's, and he's had a lot of success reversing it in many people. And I don't do the Bredesen protocol. Um, I just because I haven't gone through the licensing and all that kind of stuff. So officially I'm not doing it, but I do similar stuff to them. I've read his books and, tried to implement it in the company that helps me do it. Their protocol is called the enhanced protocol, but there's a lot of similarities to it. The one in San Diego, she's much more into a plant-based diet. She still had success with helping people, but I'm kind of no, I think the carnivore is the way to go.
Absolutely.
So um, so she's doing well. She's got one home, and I think she's licensed for 10 or 12 residents. And then I believe there's someone in Washington State that's starting to do it. And I think Dr. Bredesen's starting to license his protocol to a couple other homes, but it's still in the single digits, I think, of homes
Yeah.
that are doing this.
Yeah. Fascinating. So obviously you're incurring more costs than a typical assisted living facility because you're spending more money on food, personal trainers, great facilities like this oxygen system. Are
Mhm.
you also able to charge more because you're actually helping people get healthy and sending them home and delivering an
Yeah,
amazing service?
my rates have gone up,
Good.
definitely. Um, my Medicaid people, I charge what the Medicaid people tell me to charge. I don't have a
Yeah.
choice there. But I still think it's pretty reasonable, and I've had a lot of people tell me it's pretty reasonable what I
Yeah.
charge. And what I found is, yes, my food budget's gone up. Yes, I've spent some capital on equipment. I have trainers that other people don't have, but my beds are never empty.
Yeah.
Like as soon as someone moves out, or unfortunately, I do have people pass away.
Mm.
Um, I have people who want to move in right away, and um, there's these people called referral agents that are wonderful people that go. They're sort of ex-social workers, administrators in hospitals. They've got a good network in the healthcare industry, and so they can, when the hospital needs to discharge someone to assisted living, they call these referral agents, and then they find them a home and they send them to mine. But I have to pay them like a month's commission to bring someone to my home. But
Okay.
now the word's getting out about mine. I can bypass those people,
That's brilliant.
and in many cases, and just move them in at no charge. And so the combination of having my beds filled all the time and not paying these referral agents is far more savings to me than the money I'm spending um, doing the protocols and what I'm trying with a healthy living.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, we need to encourage more people to do this, right? So other people who are
Right.
in the sort of assisted living space or are interested, Hal's created a brand, and that brand equals healing and a great experience and a chance to come home if you really want it. So
Right.
people from all over the country, I'm sure, are trying to contact you and see if they can get onto a
Yes.
waiting list to join. And there is as there should be, there is a financial benefit to that. You don't have to pay these referral fees for people to secure you the resident, and you can charge a little bit more because you're just offering it. In my opinion, a service
Right.
that's a
Value.
thousand times better.
Well, and if we can send people home, then you stop paying for assisted living.
Well,
So
yeah,
so
exactly.
if you for the customer, it's good too. Maybe it's a little higher than some of the other homes in the area, but if you can save a year or two of this, I mean, it's
Oh
several
man,
$1,000s a month. That's a huge savings, and you're healthy. It's not a bad thing.
no, I think it's brilliant. Well, that moves on to my next question. How has this changed your life as far as meaning and purpose goes now that you are making a big impact to people's lives?
Oh, it's huge. It, it's it's wonderful to tap into this community of people who are passionate about their health because every time someone discovers something, I get a text, or someone sends me a link to a podcast, or to a tweet that someone put out there about a new study or something like that, and everyone gets excited. I mean, it just it, like I'll be listening to podcasts in the car. I'm constantly, how can we make this better? How can we make people healthier? This person has this problem. What are we doing wrong? What can we make it, who can I talk to? What new therapies and treatments? It almost gets overwhelming. Like, okay, we got to cut through. There's tons of, as you've probably seen, everything from supplements to therapies that you bring people to online information, to new uh, technology breakthroughs. Like, I was just talking to the CEO of a toothbrush company that has a toothbrush that you can just stick in your mouth, that has sort of a mouth guard, like when you play sports on it. And it has lots of little bristles, and you can hold it in there for like 20 seconds and it cleans your whole teeth, and then you pull it out. Well, that's fantastic for assisted living people who have dementia, because the caregiver not trying to like scrape around his teeth to do the traditional toothbrush. So there's all kinds of new technology and stuff. And I think this is so underrepresented. Uh, the American culture, I don't know how it is in Australia, is very much not an intergenerational culture where you don't have two or three generations in the same house. You have, my kids are grown up, they're all living on their own. My parents live on the other side of the country from me. So it becomes very easy when the grandparents get old to, okay, let's just move them into assisted living because we can't live near them. So what we're trying to do here is make it so grandma and grandpa are healthy until maybe the last 6 months of their lives. And it doesn't put the burden on the kids. It doesn't put the financial burden on them. Their inheritance doesn't, go all to me, kind of thing. And they can start, sharing it as a family of, hey, there's all kinds of stuff that we can do to make ourselves healthier, and let's trickle that down to the kids and the grandkids of, let's get you guys in healthy habits now, that when you reach those elderly ages, you got nothing to worry about. You enjoy your retirement until you pass away in your sleep at 99, and had a wonderful life. And that, I think there's a huge movement throughout the world that, at least I'm being trying to be optimistic and hopeful, of people that are like, I'm tired of feeling tired and I want to be healthy and I want to enjoy life. And I don't think the pharmaceutical industry is going to fix that anytime soon.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Hal Cranmer, thank you so much for joining today. That was an enlightening conversation, a lot of fun. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm humbled that you'd ask me on, Simon. I love what you're doing, and please keep it up. This word
My
needs to
pleasure.
spread.
Thanks, Hal.